Washington, D.C., the center place of America, is now under another state of emergency. Can you believe it? D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser, the same mayor who really didn't want the National Guard when J6 rallies was becoming hot. She now wanted the National Guard to deal with something else, a migrant crisis. And since her city is not able to get their bearings straight, this is becoming a major crisis. And of course, she is now out declaring a state of emergency. So we'll take a look at this. Mayor Muriel Bowser is responding to the busing of immigrants that has been taking place for quite some time. I don't have much background on that story, but remember that the various states, Arizona and Texas and others, were busing migrants because we have a serious migrant problem at our border. We've had a broken border for my entire life here. And the states are starting to get tired of it, especially when a current administration like the Bidens has refused to do anything about it. So now that what they're doing is they're busing people to other locations. One of those locations is Washington, D.C. Another location is Chicago, Illinois. And both of these states have previously declared themselves to be sanctuary cities. Remember, Mayor Muriel Bowser, the mayor of Washington, D.C., said this many times over, repeated this at length on her Twitter. She said this, first of all, when Donald Trump was building the wall, you can see that tweet is not available anymore. She posted on Twitter back on June 1st, 2017, saying, "Tear it down. DC is a sanctuary city." Clearly, the flyer is meant to scare and divide our residents. We won't stand for it, right? So the mayor's saying it is a sanctuary city. Mayor Muriel Bowser also said this, said Washington, D.C. is a sanctuary city on another post. This coming from the official mayor account on Twitter. Says, "We protect the rights and the humanity of all our residents, and our DC values and our local culture are guided by a celebration of diversity and inclusivity." Hashtag thread. See the full statement below. So you see those words? We protect the rights and the humanity of our residents, and we have DC values, and we're guided by a celebration of diversity and inclusivity. And she posted this statement. She said in the first sentence, Washington, D.C. is a sanctuary city. That is why we created the Immigrant Justice Legal Services Grant Program, so that immigrants have the right to resources they need to undertake their rights, to find legal support, and we're going to continue to make that program a top priority. And he says, unfortunately, immigrants have been made to live in fear. We stand up for our neighbors. We must send a message loud and clear to Congress that we are not a country of fear, and that we know these inhumane actions do not make us any safer, and that this is not the type of leadership, or the lack thereof, that Americans want. That's Mayor Muriel Bowser. All right. So she runs Washington, D.C. over there. And after the busing of migrants from the border states started appearing at her doorstep, she had a little bit of a different tune. This is the Washington, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser now announcing they don't know what to do about all these migrants, and they have to declare a state of emergency.
We are allocating an initial $10 million to stand up the new office and support organizations working in the field. We will seek reimbursement from FEMA for all eligible services.
Federal
and we
emergency
have experience
management.
working with FEMA on the reimbursement of eligible services, and I'll say a little bit more about what we think FEMA could do to make sure that states and cities like ours aren't left holding the bag.
So that states and cities like theirs are not left holding the bag. And so FEMA, of course, is a federal agency. And so, of course, your tax dollars are going to go to FEMA, which will go into the Washington, D.C. coffers when they get their $10 million reimbursement back from the federal government or something, all because they don't want to do anything to secure the border.
And so in order to create this new offices, I am declaring a public emergency.
Wow.
And this public emergency will give my administration the following authority. To establish a migrant services office with the DHS and direct the department to provide services and supports to migrants arriving from the southern border states, authorize the city administrator and the chief financial officer to set aside and spend funds to respond to the emergency, to authorize the chief procurement officer to respond to the emergency.
It's another state of emergency, a self-inflicted state of emergency because our federal government can't even get the borders figured out. And, this is kind of a shocking thing. In Arizona, we're used to being ignored by the federal government. We just kind of get that. It's like, well, they're 3,000 miles away, whatever. They haven't cared at all. They're not going to care anytime recently. And so we're going to have to take care of it ourselves. But what's curious is that the federal government is also incapable of, I guess, caring for themselves right in their own backyard. I mean, this is the same place that all the senators go and all the Republicans and Democrats go to cocktail parties at all of these different affairs there. And they're so incompetent that they can't even manage this crisis in their own backyard. How are the rest of us ever supposed to think that they'll do anything remotely competent thousands of miles away, right? It's just a foregone conclusion they won't. But hey, at least they're feeling some of the consequences of a reckless border policy. Here is Citycouncilperson Brianne Nadeau, who is a council member over from Ward number 1 out of Washington, D.C., and she's going to be explaining what these consequences feel like. And she's going to use this phrase. She's going to say, we're becoming a border town. Oh my gosh. Like that's, like that's a horrific thing. And there's border towns all over the southern border. And yeah, they're getting completely overran. There's footage of it all over the place. Here is Brianne Nadeau.
So it's been said, but it's worth reiterating.
Tell us.
That the governors of Texas and Arizona have created this crisis.
Yeah, totally our fault.
The federal government has not stepped up to assist the District of Columbia. So we, along with our regional partners, will do what we've always done.
Washington, D.C. and their regional partners. Do you have any idea how much money is in Washington, D.C.? It's one of the richest places in the whole world, filled with leftists and Democrats. And so this woman, or I'm sorry, I don't, what's her name? Brianne. All right, Brianne is here.
Rise to the occasion. We've learned from border towns like El Paso and Brownsville. And in many ways,
what?
The governors of Texas and Arizona have turned us into a border town.
Oh!
We don't know how long this will take to resolve. We don't know how long they will continue busing. And so the right thing to do here is to be prepared to ensure we can greet every bus.
What does that mean? What does that mean? What does a border town mean? I thought like a bunch of racist Arizonans or something. I mean, is that what she means? I don't know what that means. Turned her into a border town. It feels pejorative, right? Racist, K-Bean? What does it mean? Racists? I don't know what it means.
We can get people off on the right foot. We can get them where they want to go. And that will ultimately help them.
Now, wait a minute. Where'd she say? I thought that they were going to integrate them into their communities because they value diversity and inclusion. What did she say? Where are they going?
Here is to be prepared to ensure we can greet every bus. We can get people off on the right foot. We can get them where they want to go. And that will ultimately help them in their immigration process.
Get them where they want to go, as long as it's not in Washington, D.C. Just get the hell out of here. We don't want you here. We said we did, but we got 11,000 of you and we don't want you anymore. So now you have to go someplace else. Now, this is a result of their ridiculous policies. This policy came from the Biden administration directly. They did, to their benefit, they did send Kamala Harris down to Guatemala, where she scolded, wagged her fingers at all the Guatemalans, and she said, "Don't you come to our country." And then she came back and undid a bunch of policies and said the border's wide open. And so I guess her words didn't match the policy. And guess what they listened to? The policy. And what happens when that is what the policy is? Well, here we learn from CNN that we have a record number of dead migrants crossing the United States border. Well done, Joe Biden administration. Well done with your humanitarianism and your inclusivity and your diversity. Very good job. Record numbers of dead migrants coming across the border. And you can see it here. Nearly 750 migrants had died at the southern border this fiscal year, a record that surpasses last year's total by more than 200 people. Yeah, it's going up. DHS shared the figures. And we've talked about this. I said this, it makes me sick. It says, oppressive desert heat. It's 115 degrees out here some days. Dangerous waters and falling from the border wall. It is now an included death. How many people died from falling from the border wall? Oh, they're going to blame Trump. Can you believe this? Trump is murdering immigrants because they're falling from the border wall, according to CNN. We live in the dumbest timeline, I swear. Since October 1st, which marks the start of the fiscal year, there have been 748 deaths. That's up, okay? That's up. 557 with a month left still to go. That's up from 557 that took place in 2021. The figures don't always capture all the deaths, obviously, right? That's stuff that is on the United States side of the border. But anybody who is on the Mexican side of the border, probably not being counted in those DHS numbers. So 750, you got to imagine, is like low. Last week, the bodies of at least 8 migrants who came, Kamala said don't come, but they came and now they're dead, trying to cross the U.S. border were found in the Rio Grande, Customs and Border Protection said. The remains were discovered by agents and authorities. An increasing number of migrants continue to appear at the border. Arrests of migrants remain high. In July of this year, okay, now I want to put this in context. Washington, D.C. is freaking out about 11,000 migrants. In July, the U.S. Border Patrol made more than 181,000 arrests. So how many? That's arrests. In the past, many migrant deaths have been related to heat exposure. Advocates for migrants say that they may be forced to take increasingly risky paths to reach the border because of Trump-era policies. Yeah, there you go. Deaths along the U.S. border have been rising over the years. Fiscal year 2020, in 2020, okay, the last year that Trump was out, there were 247 deaths, 300 the year before that. So Joe Biden's up to 748, up from about Trump, the sort of in 2020, 247 up to about 740 something. Transnational criminal organizations are behind it all. There have been tens of thousands of searches, and the whole border is just a total disaster. And the Biden administration is just allowing dead migrants to pile up all over the place. Meanwhile, we see that other cities and other states are not wanting the migrants either. We have this state of Illinois and Governor Pritzker saying that the Texas governor is sowing chaos by sending these migrants over to Chicago. Here is Governor Pritzker today.
Obviously, another busload of migrants came into Chicago last night.
Another bus arrived.
To Governor Abbott's office to see what, if anything.
Have you been talking with the governor to see what is going on here?
Do you expect these buses will continue for some time, maybe to the election?
At the staff level, our staffs have been in contact with one another, but they have been wholly uncooperative.
Wholly uncooperative.
They are trying to sow chaos around the country, not just here in
Trying
Chicago.
to sow chaos, yeah.
And as you've heard, the mayor also has, had words about this, and
those dang
I will
flies,
just say that
pesky.
We're going to do everything we can to care for these are refugees and asylum seekers.
Refugees and asylum seekers,
who are escaping their homes to come to the United States of America, and it shouldn't be that the governor of Texas is essentially taking these people, treating them like chattel, treating them like property, putting them on buses, sending them wherever he wants to send.
Yeah, he definitely should not send them wherever he wants to send them, right? Like, he shouldn't just send them to Chicago, and he's treating them like chattel. He's treating them like cattle. He's treating them like pieces of property. And it's just horrific what he's doing. It absolutely shouldn't happen. Shouldn't happen at all. But that's weird. What is this story over from Fox News? It says, migrants that are being bused to Sanctuary City in Chicago are promptly shipped off to the suburbs. So as soon as they get there, Governor Pritzker's like, we don't want you in Chicago. All right, so you got to get the heck out of here. The immigrants were sent to Chicago as part of Governor Abbott's response to the migrant crisis. A group of over 100 migrants from the southern border were moved to an Illinois suburb after being welcomed in Chicago, an action that is reportedly frustrating local officials. Migrants are staying at a Hampton Inn bar at Burbridge and Holiday Inn in Countryside. Chicago is a sanctuary city and Cook County is a sanctuary county. The migrants at the Burr Ridge Hampton Inn are in DuPage County. The county's sanctuary status is unclear, right? So they're shipping them to non-sanctuary cities. They're like, we don't want you here, right? So these lefty Democrats will get out there in front of the media and they'll say, I can't believe they're treating these people like cattle. They're shipping them all over the country. They show up in Chicago, in a sanctuary city, in a sanctuary county called Cook County, and they ship them right over into DuPage, into a neighboring county. And now they're all, well, nobody wants anything to do with them. But they're okay with them piling across the border. And we know that there's been all sorts of back and forth. I'm the mayor. I should have been told. I'm frustrated at the mayor. And Mayor Lightfoot was in her not being told. Everybody's frustrated because everybody is, nobody wants to take care of these migrants. But they're okay encouraging them and incentivizing them to come be a part of the American dream, saying that anybody who challenges them is nothing more than a racist. Well, all of them seem very, very NIMBY, not in my backyard. They don't want they want to talk all about it. A lot of sloganeering from afar, but when the reality hits, they don't want anything to do with them. Disgusting. Meanwhile, people are dropping dead at the border as a result of their policies. So we'll continue to cover this, and I hope you join us. Thank you for subscribing.